Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dad Bods and Beards. We are here in the studio today with a friend of ours that we've met a couple of times at a few different networking events, and we'll have you introduce yourself in a minute.
Cool.
But as always, want to highlight our primary sponsor, Mountain Ops. We're still on the, it's a 90-day challenge, right?
Yeah.
But how's it been going for you?
I'm almost 60 pounds down now.
Yeah. Well, not in 90 days.
No.
Challenge.
Since August.
Yeah, since we started.
I'm down a head size.
Yeah, you do that.
No, but So I was talking to Brock, and since we started our marathon prep yesterday.
We did.
And he's like, because I told him I was just exhausted. He's like, start drinking Enduro. And so Enduro is like a pre-workout without caffeine, and it really feeds your.
It's better for your cardiac health.
And you're doing a marathon?
I'm doing a half. He's doing a full.
Why?
Yeah,
because we're idiots.
Because I
don't know if you running's not that fun, is it?
It's not, but actually I'm getting into it. So I'm down about 50 from when we started. He's down about 60.
I'm not joking.
What are you going to rename this podcast when it's when you're like shredded?
Jacked Bods and Beards.
Jacked Bods and Beards.
No, but, or Rad Bods and Beards.
When I hit 250, we are going skydiving, and we're going to go to Moab.
You keep saying we, like you got a mouse in your pocket?
You're going. No, you're legit going. We have a couple people going, and we're going to film it and all this kind of stuff. It's always been a bucket list thing of mine, but I've always been too much. You have to wait 255.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, no, I'm going to get strapped on a man's back, and this is going to happen.
Yeah. So one of our primary sponsors
on his stomach?
Is no, you're in the front of them.
Yeah.
So he's going to look like a little backpack.
Yeah. I'm just carrying him. I'm walking.
But yeah, so we've been sponsored by Mountain Ops since August, because the big thing is Mountain Ops is a supplement brand that's actually very health-based. There's very transparent, and we've been utilizing their products since August. And one of the big things was working with Brock, a trainer that is associated with Mountain Ops, was setting some crazy big goals, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, all that stuff. And the big one was, because I have such bad ADHD at times, I am like a master procrastinator. Work great when I have a lot of pressure. So it was setting a massive goal that there was no time to slack. And I'm now up to, I can do just about 6.5 miles without having to stop now. Couldn't even run a mile when we started. And I enjoy it. I run when I'm stressed out now. And so Mountain Ops is
I think that's a good, spiritual thing. You run when you're stressed out. You just run away from your problems.
Totally.
That's what I've heard is the best thing to do.
You have no idea how true that is and how much that started the podcast.
This is really tough with the kids. I'm just going to take a little run. Well, your wife's like, what?
Yeah, as our listeners will know, literally my mental health journey started with a run. Blacking out and taking off. So it's...
mine is running so hard that, I guess just speed walking for everyone else. But my heart rate goes so fast it's about to explode that I just forget everything else. I'm like, breathe.
He's
totally present.
Literally
forget about everything.
180. Like, Tyson, you need to breathe.
A long time ago, I was dumb enough to tell people I was going to do a triathlon on a radio show. Then everybody starts asking me, when's you doing the triathlon? So I signed up. And then I was like, I'm just going to train for the swim because I didn't really know how to swim. Yeah. I was afraid to have my head in the water. Ooh. So I look like a jackass. So I finally just 5 days a week, and I finally go to the place with my swim trainer, and I feel like I'm going to drown the whole time, the practice the week before. But I'm like, I'm just going to do it. So I go the next week, and my sister runs up before the race, hands me the phone. It's my mom. She's like, I'm pretty sure you're going to drown. You should. And I'm like, Mom, this is moments before I'm going. Thanks for the pep talk. It's the only thing I'm worried about is maybe drowning. But here I am.
Sure. Well,
we got to wear wetsuits. So that helped.
So that's funny. But yeah, this is. I feel like we're getting really far into it. We didn't even.
But you're gonna have to do it because you've been telling everybody you're gonna do it. So you have all this accountability.
We have so many friends.
Dude, we have people flying in to run with us. We have a really good
buddy of ours that is like a pretty. He's like a David Goggins like zealot.
I shaved my head into a mohawk when I did it, but I told my wife we stayed at my cabin before we went. I'm like, hey, just bring the clippers. She bought beard trimmers. So they ran out of battery. So it wasn't really the best mohawk, but I thought it would help, make me feel tough. Yeah.
But, that's so funny. But yeah, that's kind of part of the whole Mountain Ops journeys for us and where they're tied into the show. And but like always, guys, use code DADBODS at checkout. You'll get 20% off. But before we get any further, Garrett, thanks for being here.
What's up? Thanks for having me, guys.
We're like 8 minutes into the show, and we're like, oh, by the way, this is Garrett. But
that's how
Garrett,
it works with us.
Yeah, no, we another one. So Sean Finnegan is pretty heavily involved with Dad Bods and Beards.
Yep.
He is the connector of connectors.
Totally.
I mean, the guy puts on
Love Sean.
some killer events. Him and Aaron put on a killer event a couple weeks ago. And
I was in Hawaii, or else I would have been there.
Oh, dude, it was insane. We didn't even. There were so many people there. We didn't even get to watch the hockey game. Like some people
we didn't
were.
eat. We
were just chatting with like so many cool people. But yeah, before we get farther into it, so Garrett Gunderson. It's a very Utah name. I've met a lot of Gundersons here.
Really?
Never anywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't know, man.
But well, with that, we'll see you guys next week.
I know.
I'm like, no.
Okay.
But so tell us a little bit. So I watched you at a comedy special on, but primarily you're a finance guy.
Right.
So with Dad Bods and Beers, one of the things that we like to do is we like to bring in and talk to people of pretty much all different expertise and different things. So we'll probably get into the finance, some stuff. Cause
that's my first question.
Yeah. Finance and dads pretty much goes hand in hand with figuring crap out. And then obviously I wanted to, talk a little bit about the comedy career too. Cause that was always like a bucket list of mine that I just crashed at. So, but yeah, give us a quick.
But it was for karaoke.
Well,
we decided.
It's interesting because you're talking about dads and, money. And there's this dynamic that happens where, when someone gets married, then they're like, okay, I've got to provide for my family. Uh-huh. But then all of a sudden they're not the person that their wife dated anymore because now they're so focused on providing for the family. And what happens is they don't want to let their spouse down. So when things get tough, they usually are awful at communicating what's going on because they don't want to create fear, doubt, or worry in their spouse. And what happens is they get to an isolated point where they think working harder is the only solution instead of like getting past the guilt and shame of where they're at, talking through it, and then creating a really strategic path. I call it the productivity conundrum. And it just happens all the time. I mean, I think a lot of guys just feel guilt and shame around finance. They wish they were further along, feel like they should be further along, compare themselves to other people, measure net worth unnecessarily to where they're at in life. And, it's just kind of like an epidemic, really.
Dude.
So what was your book called? Killing Crows?
Yeah. So the first book I wrote, Killing Sacred Cows.
Sacred Cows!
Yeah. I'm like, what book did you read?
So mine was a Dr. Seuss book.
Maybe you should listen to the book and not read it.
You mixed in his book title and like Counting Crows. And so Killing Sacred Cows.
I'm sorry. And you talk about the myths.
The very, very first podcast I did when I wrote the book. So it hits New York Times. I'm feeling so good. I do a podcast, and the person for 90 minutes called it Killing Scared Crows. And I would try to correct him. I'm like,
Killing Scared Crows?
I'm like, yeah, I wrote Killing Sacred Cows. I said it over and over again. And then at the end, they go, hey, what do you think I should invest in? I'm like, oh, dude, I know for sure. Bifocals, literacy, a new career.
You're you're like LASIK surgery centers.
Any of that might work. But
you're like proofreading, like, oh, geez, that's so funny.
Yeah, that was the first book I ever wrote. It's still like on the top 100, most of the time in the top 20 for wealth management on Amazon. Wow. But I just updated it, did part 2. So it's the same book, shorter, because when I first wrote it, like my publisher's like, we want it to be longer because then people see the spine at the bookstore. I'm like, who's going to the bookstore these days?
Yeah.
So I cut 30,000 words out to make it a little bit more tight. But if they get the audiobook, I have a whole 2 hours of comedy. So when you go through one of the chapters, there's 9 myths. After that chapter, I have comedy about that myth. So that you could kind of like learn and then kind of laugh about it afterwards.
That's cool.
Yeah.
See, I like that because we've talked about this a few times. I listen to books, like just I do like to read, but then it's just typical guy. I'll just trail off. I'm like, crap, what did I just read? So I'll have to do that. We like to, when we've had guys on the show that have written books and things like that, we like to link them on the link pages. So
yeah, the funny thing is when I write Killing Sacred Cows. And I didn't do the audiobook.
It's crows.
Sorry. Yeah. Oh, you're right. You're going to confuse me before this is over. I'm not sure what my own book was.
Gaslighting the hell out
of what would that book be about? Like just murdering birds?
Yeah. But the joke is that a whole group of crows is also called a murder. So, we're going to get all philosophical on you.
Shut up. No,
but yeah, you're saying that.
I don't remember what I said.
You said when you first wrote the book.
Oh yeah, so this firm calls me like, hey, we want to publish your audiobook. Will you read it? And I'm like, sure. So I book out 2 days in the studio, and I realized I suck at reading. Like it was awful. I spent 2 days of like stuttering and not emphasizing the right words.
I feel like we're just connected.
It was so bad. And then I just, felt bad for the editors, put it out. And then you go look at the reviews and the reviews will be like, great book, terrible reader, like narration, on Audible, you get the narration score and then you get the book score. Book score much higher than the narration score. So this last time, I literally hired this guy, Larry Moss, who's coached some of the best actors in the world,
and read it.
and worked on that. And I spent 3 months where I'd be like, was I present? Was I sound like I was reading? Like have other people listen to it? And so it's much better, you know?
So you read it a second time though?
Yeah, I did read it. And
see, I enjoy it a lot when the authors read their own books. Right, because there's obviously there's a book I'm reading right now that is written by a guy, but then it's narrated by a British guy, and it throws me off because I've listened to interviews of the author,
and you want to hear his voice when you're reading.
Yeah. So I like that.
So yeah, that was a good process, and I got to a place where I'll also just be ad-libbing at moments, like, oh, here's some additional details. Yeah. But I had someone say, man, I can't believe you didn't read your book, that you just kind of like spoke it. And I'm like, no, I was reading. So that was a good compliment, because the first one, you could tell I was reading the book and just trying to get through it as fast as possible and be done.
Dude, it makes me laugh because I like most guys, I downloaded David Goggins, his couple different books. And one of the ones where it's the guy that helped him put everything together, he narrates the book, but then on the Audible side, they'll stop midway through chapters and they almost kind of do like a little mini podcast inside the audiobook with David Goggins. And I'm sitting there laughing because we've all heard the way David Goggins talks. And I'm like, you should have had him read his own book, because like just the way he talks would have been so much, almost like funnier to like listen to his book and his like his emphasis and his emotion behind it. But
the title for his book should have been "Can't Hurt Me, Dad."
No, yeah, for real.
Right? Because you're like, yeah, I'm like, that's the real story there.
Yeah.
It's like
that was a legit story.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've read, I mean, they're great books, but it's just, I like where he just is just the grammatical slip ups and stuff. I'm like, oh, that'd have been so great if he read his own book.
Dude, I shot an elk this year or last year, and it went 3 miles.
What?
So I had to
it for 3
hack this thing out like 3 miles. So I had to walk in 3 miles, walk out 3 miles, walk in 3 miles.
How many times did you say?
It was a 20-mile day. Oh, wow. And the whole time I just thought I could do 40% more. I could just, so I had like his voice in my head, just like I could do 40% more. And I nearly killed myself because I didn't have enough water, because I was just like, oh, I shot him the night before. I'm like, oh, he's just gonna be laying down there. Nope. He walked a couple more miles.
Yeah.
And then I had to find him. And it was like, dude, yeah.
That just, this is stupid, but this is really why he was saying that. I was just picturing myself with a backpack with the parachute and just the guy, and I'm just carrying the guy and go 40% more. And I'm carrying him to the plane.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you're like halfway through that walk, you're like, do I really want this elk meat?
I'm like, I'm going to eat every piece of elk meat. We are not letting any of this go to waste.
Was it good?
It's still eating it, yeah.
Did you make jerky?
No, because I can't have salt.
Oh, okay.
So I was, in the past, I always made that, but I have some kidney stuff, so I don't have salt.
No,
so
you're gonna eat
so
it.
It's hamburger and basically the backstrap. That's what I made.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But I had some elk
hamburger
today.
Legit is so
or elk burger, I guess. But yeah,
I grew up. What my dad did is we grew up in Idaho, and he would go get he would shoot deer, and that's what we would have. But he would buy a little bit. Well, he would go to the butcher, and the butcher would throw a little bit of hamburger in it. And you couldn't tell a difference, and so the gaminess was all gone and stuff like that.
Elk,
I really liked it.
I haven't really shot an elk that was gamey. I mean, deer can be that way.
Deer, yeah.
My wife she doesn't want me to deer hunt. She just wants elk, and she just expects me to get one. She's like, why aren't you home yet? I'm like, they don't just walk up to me.
Yeah.
Like, and I have a bow. It's very manly. You don't understand. Yeah.
Archery hunting's fun.
I shot one elk that was a bull with a gun, and then the other 3 that I've killed were with a bow.
That's amazing. So, that takes talent too.
It's humbling, because I thought I was amazing. Like,
did you ever shake because they're so close and you get so nervous?
Well, the very first time I went was in 2020, and my buddy, I don't know if you guys know Ben Greenfield, he calls me. He's like, "Hey man, like, let's go elk hunting," and I'm like, "Awesome." So I go buy a gun, send him a picture. He's like, "Dude, we're bow hunting." I'm like, "We're bow hunting in 33 days." So I just like shot 3 times a day. I hired a coach, worked on it, and then I'm like trying to study up as much as I can, because this is a totally different game.
Oh, yeah.
And so when finally, like on the 3rd day, this guide I'm with sees an elk 1,000 yards away. I don't even know how he sees it. And he's like, all right, I'm going to call it. If it comes this way, you need to run down this canyon, up one more. He'll come over the other 2, and he'll come right to us. I'm like, okay. So I sprint.
Sure, no big.
I'm winded. I go kneel on this, next to this tree, and like 300 yards away, I can see it coming right at me, like running.
Wow.
And I'm just like, all right, calm down. Heart rate's just racing.
Yeah, right.
But then another elk starts bugling, and I look over, and it's bigger. And so I look at him, and he's like telling me to move. So I go to this other tree, stand next to it, and I start just meditating. I was able to calm my heart down, to be a normal rate. And then he stopped behind a tree. So I pulled, only waited for like 60 seconds, felt like 60 days, dude. It's just like, and he finally stepped forward and I got him. So it was pretty much beginner's luck that I was able to get that because it was on public land. And then, you know, that one was a big pack out too. And my wife was worried before I left. She's like, I feel like you're going to die. She's bawling. I'm like, why? She's like, I just feel like something bad's going to happen. We saw wolves on that trip. So I was I'm carrying a meat popsicle, you know, and it's foggy. Can't see my hand in front of my face. And I was like, well, maybe she was right. Yeah. Maybe this is going to happen.
Have you ever seen Alone, the TV series?
Yeah.
So what episode is it when they're in Canada? And
where it's all bears.
Yeah, and Wolverines and crap, and there's like that one guy who
killed the Wolverine with
just stabs it and runs away, and then comes back.
That's a guy you don't want to mess with.
I know, and he won it. I'm like, holy crap, who is this guy?
I went camping with this guy that was a Green Beret, and he said that he hid under like leaves and killed a deer by slitting its throat.
What?
I'm like, how long did you wait? He goes, for like, I don't know, 13 hours.
Yeah, no, dude, I give up in the bathroom after 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, these people, I'm like, yeah, you don't want to mess with those guys, you know?
Yeah, but I was just like, holy crap. Okay, but to revert back to
finance.
So talking about crows.
Yeah.
No.
I was like, oh my gosh.
No, now that I know it's cows.
Yeah.
So I get nervous and I read things that aren't right. In your book, Killing Sacred Cows, you discuss financial myths that hinder prosperity. Mm-hmm. How do these myths contribute to mental stress, and how can debunking them improve one's mental health? The reason why I ChatGPT that, just FYI, that's not my words, because I said, hey, will you write this question about this? And it made it sound like I was better. But with that, though, you hit my, like, right when you were introducing yourself, that's exactly how I felt. I felt that where I don't want to, not necessarily not tell anyone the truth, but almost hide it from them so that they don't feel the stress that I feel.
Yeah, but they do sense it. They're too damn smart. 100%. You know?
Logan and I have actually discussed this. Like, we're not hiding crap from them. They know something's up. And so with that being said, how is it that you talking about these myths, and you can talk about the myths, how is debunking them going to help our mental health?
So the very first myth in the book is called the finite pie. Mm-hmm. And people believe there's only so much to go around, that everything is a zero-sum game. One wins at the cost of another. So it's all about competition. Take what you can. It's so stressful because it's like people always feel behind and they always got to work harder, do more, chase it. And so they never have an opportunity to be present and enjoy life. And scarcity is a destroyer of wealth because it actually has us make irrational decisions and choices. And then when we get into a place where we see everyone else that we think are doing better than we're doing, then we start to judge ourselves. It creates a tremendous amount of stress and actually hurts our overall self-identity. So that first myth is probably the biggest culprit of mental stress and anguish, because if you think that you're running out of time, if you think that someone else is going to take it if you don't run for it, if you think someone's going to outwork you and that's going to cost you, then it gets people in the grind, and that grind is just taxing over time.
Interesting.
Facts, though. I have felt that. I've actually worked with Brock. I don't know. Have you met Brock Painter yet?
No.
So he's been in some of the X rooms. He's the one who's coaching us and helping us with our running and our exercise program and regime and stuff like that. But we talk about like understanding our stresses and stuff like that. And I've learned this, that when I feel stressed about anything, I go to the lab with Copper Johns and I start working. Because I feel like, hey, if I work, that means I'm doing something productive, and which means I'm going to make money from this. And he's like, Tyson, what, you working at 9 o'clock at night? Who is that helping? He's like, you're just feeding into your stress. You're just feeding it. He's like, understand that, you know, and it's like, talk to your wife. And so I've been talking to my wife. I've been learning that the stress can take its time, like understanding where it's coming from and that it's trying to save me and protect me. But at the same time, I need to understand. Anyway, point being is what you're saying is true. Like, it legit, like, we get into that rut and then we lose our families, we lose our kids, we lose time, and it just sucks. I felt that, and I've seen that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what you said when you first kind of kicked it off in the open, I think we all probably have moments, especially if you've had any experience in any kind of like committed relationship where you share finances, where you have, whether it's a lost job or you made a financial mistake or like things are not going as well, and you like think you're protecting the other person from the stress. But like he said, I've learned this firsthand. My wife was way more intelligent than I gave her credit, because she like
intuition and all that, right?
It was like, it wasn't so much like, tell me what's going on. It's like, I want you to admit it to me because it's like they already know. Like even they don't know all the details, they just know they know you better than you know yourself half the time. So they know when your mannerisms are off. They know when it's like
they could tell when you're not present.
Like,
and usually when we're
100%.
like, all right, we got to do all this, and we move to activity over productivity sometimes because the activity feels safe, even if it's not leading us to the highest productivity. Because the highest productivity comes from vision. Like, what's our vision? What's the container in which we create value? And then when we invest in ourselves to become more valuable, we can deliver that higher value. And if we just get busy, then we actually drain our energy. We actually miss the big picture, and it's trading time for money and those kind of factors. And it limits our overall kind of.
Interesting.
That reminds me of that quote. And remind me what that quote is. No, I'm joking.
It's like, what?
No, it's like doing the thing is doing the thing. Preparing to do the thing is not doing the thing.
Thinking about doing
the thing is not doing the thing.
Yeah.
And that's what it
So
reminds me
on.
of is like we're trying to be productive, but we're still scared. We're still timid. We're still afraid to actually succeed. I'm learning that I've been kind of afraid to succeed.
And why is that? Like, that's a good question everyone should ask themselves. What about success am I afraid of?
Ooh.
And I'm still working on that because like I'm working hard for it as if I am successful. That's a great question. What do you find?
I listed 7.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, what would have to be true for me to defeat these false limited beliefs? Mm-hmm. Right. So the first thing is what I recognized was I have a problem, especially in the past, with being a people pleaser.
Me too.
I want everybody to like me.
Exactly. Like it's me.
Well,
Right. Which means I might sacrifice my own vision in life to appease someone else, and that could be destructive and derailing, right? Like part of it is I have to remind myself like what other people think about me is not really any of my business. I mean, I'm just going to do the best I can, and if I'm then just trying to appease them, and then it hijacks what I'm up to. So it's, will I still be loved and accepted if I have more success? Will I be capable of sustaining it and remain in flow, or will I destroy other important things in my life? It's these kind of things, and I would say, well, what would have to be true to have the reverse of that belief? And I simply just wrote those down. And I said, well, this is what have to be true. So let's say you're worried about family and friends judging you and thinking like, oh, well, you're not the same that you used to be. I'm like, cool, I'll just bring them along. I'll just do the things that we love doing. And I just categorized that I have friends, which I just can share my vision with. I can tell them what my challenges are. I just trust them with everything. And I say yes to any other invitations I possibly can. Then I have buddies. Buddies are like, I'm going to have all my buddies up to my cabin here pretty soon. We went to high school together. We're going to share dumb high school stories. We're going to laugh our butts off. I'm not going to talk about what I'm doing with my books or what I'm doing with my vision in the world and what I want to do to make an impact financially, because we're just going to reminisce on old times. And that's totally cool. That's what that category is. But then there's people I categorize as friendly. Friendly, I never share anything I'm up to, and I politely decline all their invitations because I realize that we don't share the same values. I don't want to change them. I don't want to argue with them. I don't want to have them think anything. I'm just simply going to be nice, but cordial, but calculated not to invest too much time. I just had people in 2008, I really had a struggle. I was over leveraged in real estate. I was launching my book, and I had this friend that told people that she was happy to hear that I was going through that struggle. And I was like, cool. It was also, she had a book club where they just tore my book apart in the book club, and it got back to my wife, and my wife felt bad. And I'm like, babe, it's cool. Like, they get to have their beliefs. They get to have their, whatever they say. We don't have to spend time with them. Mm-hmm. We can just choose to say no when they invite us, say, oh, thanks for thinking of us. We're not going to be able to make it. And we don't even have to say why we're not going to make it.
No.
Right?
That's
we don't need
one
to
thing
lie.
about people pleasing that's crazy hard to not explain why.
Dude, I went on a flight to San Diego. I was flying to San Diego, and my wife's ex-boyfriend that she dated before she dated me, I saw him. I went up and talked to him, and he goes, we should do lunch sometime. And I just pat him on the back. I'm like, that's never going to happen, but I appreciate the offer. Because
you're like, I already won, bro.
I just want to be like, I want to be a man of my word, and I don't want to placate someone and say yes when I mean no. And that's what happens in people pleasing. We say yes when what we mean is no, because we think that that's going to make them like us more. But here's the deal. They actually resent us because we do more for them, and it creates entitlement. Yeah. It creates expectation. And that expectation is something that we can't actually sustain long term. And therefore, it starts to decimate other important areas of our life, like being present with our family, like taking care of our health, like growing our business, all those kind of things. Why? So that someone can say, oh, you're such a nice guy. Yeah, that's fine. But people pleasing was my number one thing I had to overcome in this success thing.
And you are a nice guy and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter what they think because you know you. And that's what I'm trying to learn. Like, ask him. I have seriously canceled so many business transactions because at first I'm like, oh, I don't, like I can't say no to him. And now I'm just like, screw it. Like,
work with people you love and you'll love your life.
Yeah.
And if you work with people you don't love, like, look, I worked with someone I didn't really enjoy. We didn't share values. We grew a company to $10 million a year of revenue, and I sold it for nothing just to move on. And it's simply because we didn't see the world the same way. And I was being nice for years, even when I didn't like what was going on, because I thought that was the right thing to do. But that's a lack of leadership. That was a lack of confidence in myself. That was not listening to my intuition, because I was like, well, it's inconvenient. Intuition is almost always right, but rarely convenient.
Interesting, dude. I like where this is going, because I like what you said about friends, buddies, and friendlies.
Yeah.
Because I think especially in the men's mental health space where we are, there is so much negativity put towards like boundaries and like men like setting boundaries, right? And like, so I like that you're saying that. I like that you said like that's never gonna happen, man. Like just being blatantly honest. And some people, especially with maybe older generations, of like one big thing that my wife taught me was boundaries. Of like, there's certain times where it's okay to say no, and it doesn't have to be preceded with sorry, like, because really you're not, because either you got other plans or you frankly just don't want to.
I've gotten so good at a few phrases, like when someone, hey, can we do this? I'm like, you know what? I'm head down on my 5 objectives for the next quarter. I have no additional space, so I wouldn't be very valuable anyway. I'll let you know if that ever changes. Ooh. I never tell them, check with me later, because now they're going to check with me later. Mm-hmm. I just kind of cut it off and I say, hey, thanks for thinking of me. I really appreciate it. That's not really what my vision is. This is what I'm working on, Well,
that's like a concept in a book that I read. I listened to, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Essentialism. And it talks about the graceful no.
I actually read it, and my wife made fun of me because she didn't see me reading very often.
I feel like
Corbin Church. You know Corbin Church? He's the one who recommended that for us.
No, so he's a big entrepreneur out in Provo.
But I will say the person that wrote that book talked about what the Rockefellers do on their podcast, because their cousin is a big fan of Rockefellers.
Oh, is he?
Which is my other book.
Oh, that's right. You've got a couple of books, so it's not just the.
I've written as many as I've read. I've written as many as I've read. It's kind of like my claim to fame. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we're gonna have to link them all in there. But no, I really like
those crows.
Yeah, you're just killing sacred crows.
And somehow I just bring every conversation back to books. It's a narcissistic tendency that I have here.
Well, no, but I think there is so much health in just like self-care and self-love, and just setting those setting those boundary lines, because it's like you're giving parts of yourself away.
How? I'm sorry. How do you have the balls to say that? I'm going to say it blatantly, just like that, is because I could never picture myself ever saying it's never going to happen. Maybe because to me, I don't have the balls to do that yet.
Damn it! For me, that was easy because that was an ex-boyfriend, and so that was like that's not a word you would normally hear from. Come on, but it was like comical when he asked me to lunch.
Yeah,
because one, I know he doesn't like me. It's this weird situation where we went to the same school, and when we went to the same school, there's like 5 people that they do this onboarding into the school where you go on campus tour. He happened to be in that group. Then he joins my fraternity after I already joined it. And then all of a sudden, the girl that I fall in love with when I'm 19 and end up marrying, he's dating when I knew that I loved her. It's a bad, tragic story for his side of the equation. So it was like we were competing, but I was never in the game of competition. He just kind of knew that was always there. So I just was like, there's no chance. And you know better than to ask me that.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? But if it was like someone that I didn't have that history with, and they asked me, I'd love to say, hey, thanks for thinking of me. Now, when I tell my friends no, I always say, I really have too much going on right now. Please keep inviting me to future things, because I do want to make it. I just have a lot on my plate. So I let them know, like, no, I really want to keep being invited. And those people, otherwise.
So people understand what your real intentions are.
Right, because I have friends that don't have kids. So, like, one thing that is great and also painful is I realize anytime I'm judging someone, what I'm really doing is projecting something that's unresolved in me.
Oh, dang.
And they're like such a mirror for me.
I never looked at it that way.
Right? And I'm always like why is it that I feel this way? And so I had this situation with someone where I was like so judgmental and pissed all the time. I was like, why am I? And I was like, oh, it's because they're playing mediator and moderator and won't let me have a direct conversation with their spouse. And because there's unrest and we're playing pretend, I'm not good at playing pretend. Mm-hmm. I'm not good. Like, I'm not a good poker player. I'm just, anything with pretense drives me nuts. And so I got to see what it was like to be on the other side of people pleasing. Well, when I had a firm, And I was being a people pleaser where I was like, I just want everyone to get along, but I wouldn't let them just have direct conversations. And I was just trying to mediate it. Then what I realized is everyone's unresolved. And it creates resentment, and that energy has to move somewhere. So what it moves towards is negativity instead of resolve. And so when I was on the other side of people pleasing, I realized I was so angry about it because it was showing me what a damn people pleaser I was. And I was just afraid of the direct conversation. So what I've just become really, I mean, that's a big word, masterful, but I've become really good at difficult conversations. And there's times when I was in really painful, difficult conversations, and I would just ask myself, can I handle this right now? Is this as bad as I imagined it was? What's the worst case scenario? And I would like actually go through it. I'm like, where am I feeling the pain? What is this like going through this experience? And at the end, I was like, it wasn't nearly as bad.
You're like so mature with this stuff. Like, I think this is really cool.
I think part of it is just running a business and, you know, that kind of stuff for so long. Because if I would have been mature about it earlier, I would have a lot more money and a lot more sanity. So I had to learn the hard way.
That's a good concept.
And
you learned the hard way.
Yeah. And I just remember I had to confront someone about something, and they were kind of like, they had a big temper. So I was like, how am I going to do this directly without having the blow up? And I was like, all right, so I'm going to authentically acknowledge why we're in relationship and the asset of that relationship without going over the top. But what do I admire about them? What do I acknowledge why we're in relationship? Number two, what liability have I brought to this relationship? What have I not done? Have I lacked communication? Have I, had what, like, it's usually lack of communication is the big acknowledgement, because it becomes a bigger problem through the lack of communication. Then the third thing is I'd address the issue at hand. I'm like, this is what's going on. What would you do if you're in my shoes? And I put it on them. And then I see how reasonable and rational they are based upon what strategy they come up with to handle what's going on. And if they're reasonable and rational, then the fourth step is we just come up with a solution together. And then the fifth step is 24 to 48 hours later, I have another conversation with them where I let them do the talking and I do the listening. Hey, I brought up a conversation. It might have been difficult. Anything come up for you? And if there was, then we go back to step one. If there's stuff that comes up, if it's resolved, then we move on.
So are you also a therapist?
I've been through some therapy.
I was going to say, like, there's like, I mean, you're hitting a lot of points that this is one of the reasons why we like to have different people on the show is a lot of times we'll get, when we first got started, it was just me and Tyson for like months before we even thought about having guests on. And then since we went to like full blown studio and now under full management with Aaron and Illuminix and everything, is we're having a lot more guests on. And sometimes some of our earliest listeners like just the me and Tyson episodes, but I thrive off of these because like you learn so much. And so it's almost kind of like we want to like impart this to other people because like one, you're learning a ton about the people pleasing side. I'm over here learning a ton about like, wow, I might have some unresolved issues because I try to think that I'm not fairly judgmental. Like I try to give people space, but there are still times where I'm human and I'm like making my own assumption about a situation or a person. And I'm over here almost like slightly half listening to you because now things are rolling through my brain that I'm not comfortable with in certain situations. And I'm like, what is it about my life that I'm not okay with that's making me think like that? So I really enjoy this route that we're going. And this is how it always goes. We have somebody
You
on.
said you'd ask one question that was planned and then we would
and
go
then,
over.
and it was,
like
and he asked it with the wrong book title too.
Whatever.
We're not letting that go.
Well, I went to this event like 15 years ago and they put a semicircle of people, like 8 people. And then I'm standing there and then they ask a question. I answer it for 60 seconds and they give me feedback only if there's negative feedback. And so I remember they asked me a question. I answered some stuff around being a father and I felt like I was a great father. So when they gave me feedback, it just didn't trigger me because it didn't.
Interesting.
It was like someone tell me I'm an alien from Mars. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Like it just doesn't. But then they asked a question I answered and this girl was like shaking her head and super intense. And the whole time I'm judging her so hard, but I'm not even thinking about it. It's just like, and then she goes, and I just feel judged. And I was like, there it is. I'm a judge. I'm so judgmental and I'm not even seeing it, but people feel it because I'm measuring, I have an agenda. There's all this kind of stuff. So that was like revolutionary for me to go through that. Then I have a coach I meet with every other week. And her whole process is if I have any unresolved emotion, she's like, all right, I want you to write down like who or what do you hate, shun, judge, or make wrong? And I have to write it down. And she's like, what is it about them? And then I go through like this whole process of what is it in me that I haven't accepted, and then write down a whole process about what I could forgive, what I could accept, and what I love about that, and the truth of who I am. And so it helps me like process the emotion and go through it versus ignore it or, skirt it or suppress it or whatever. The only problem with it is I cry now, and now my son makes fun of me, who's 17, like when we're watching a movie and I start getting teary-eyed and he turns to my wife and makes fun of it. Yeah.
You know what's funny is my mind went as a joke for a second, but it's just like, what do I judge? And I'm like, men in skinny jeans. Like, really? I'm like, I judge guys with skinny jeans. I'm like, what? And no, that's serious. And then he's like, but what do I like? My legs would never fit in those skinny jeans.
Sure.
I would look like a dork. So I'm judging them because
We're going to get you some skinny jeans, bud.
I just.
No, I like it.
But it's the crack. You always see they bend over. It's the crack.
Sure. Why are you checking?
I'm like, people don't need to see that. Carry on.
Are you okay?
No, it was a really good, heartfelt conversation, and I just ruined it.
No, but I like where this is going because it's so much more philosophical than I was even expecting, right? And like this is where like, the joy of having people on the show and the different perspectives and the different journeys that you've gone through, because this is where this is the other side of mental health is the action side, like the putting things like putting pen to paper and like, wow, that's a cool thought, or like, yeah, therapy sounds cool, or like improving myself sounds cool, but like you need to actually put that into action.
Yeah, if you want to grow your wealth, you have to grow yourself. That's the bottom line. If you grow your money and you don't grow yourself, there's a gap, and that gap's called risk, and you'll usually sabotage it. So talking about your question on mental health and money, I think wealth is an emotion.
Ooh.
Wealth is an emotion.
Explain that. Please.
So everybody's been taught that wealth is net worth.
Yeah.
Your assets minus your liabilities. And we actually wear it around like our net worth, even though nobody sees it, and we judge ourselves based upon it. All it is like money's just a man-made efficient tool to exchange with one another. And when we confuse our self-worth and our net worth, then we're always comparing to what the possibility is, but it's a never-ending possibility of more. So it's an unachievable goal. And what happens is we rob our enjoyment along the way to chase a future that doesn't exist. So we're like, cool, when I retire, I'll have this great life when I retire. Then I'll have all this money in this account, and then I can live and go do all the things that I'm not gonna do now, because if I do it now, it's gonna hurt my retirement. And all these financial gurus are like, if you just don't buy a car and you put that in a mutual fund in your Roth IRA, you'll be a millionaire. Guess what? You won't be a millionaire. You have $1 million and you'll live like a pauper, because you taught yourself that money's to never be spent or enjoyed, because if you have an expense, that's negative, not positive. But here's the deal. Your income is someone else's expense.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So if we're teaching people to reduce expenses, we reduce wealth. Here's why. Exchange creates wealth. And if a dollar gets spent, it's not the end of the dollar. Dollar gets to be spent again and again and again. And why does it get spent? Because goods, services, and experiences. So the more it velocitizes, the more it goes through, the more wealth is created. And if we think it's all about hoarding and holding on, then what happens is it corrupts our mind into thinking that money's not safe. We have to take what we can. We have to set it aside so that one day, someday, we can finally enjoy life. And so I believe that wealth is a byproduct of a life well lived, and a life well lived is happiness and fulfillment, which are emotions.
Ooh,
He's explaining the gap. We were talking about the gap.
Yeah. So I like what you're saying, self-worth versus net worth, right? So kind of devil's advocate.
Yeah.
What do you, because I mean, the everyday average guy is like our listener base. I mean, mid-20s to mid-20 to mid-50s, like that, and like that's our demographic is even on the analytics side. So what do you say to the everyday average guy? I mean, we're literally right there in that same mix that we've lived through the financial scarcity. We are currently living in it. Where like, what do you say when, it's like, well, how do I adopt that mindset when it is, the current economy or like?
Yeah, I get super pragmatic, and I'm saying that financial intelligence is not an option. It's a necessity. And we treat it like it's too difficult because people have sold us that bill of goods. You're not smart enough to know. We need to trust the Ivy League people and Wall Street. By the way, would you trust Wall Street?
Absolutely.
With anything? Would you let Wall Street watch your kids?
No.
Right. They'd be like, oh, sorry, we lost some of the toes of one of your kids, but I think they'll grow back.
Right.
Right? Like Wall Street Airlines, you getting on that flight?
Wall Street Airlines? No way.
Wall Street surgery, you'd be hey, bad news, you lost your kidney, but good news is we sold it. But like, that's the problem is we put our trust in these places that can't actually be trusted because we've been taught that we're not smart enough. It's not that we're not smart enough. It's that we've had low standards when it comes to money. We've been, I don't know, indoctrinated is the only word that I can think of to believe that and let me just simplify the whole thing. Like, this is the pragmatics of it. You pay yourself first. So you set up a separate bank account, and every time money comes into you, you put money into that separate bank account. How do you find money to put in there? 4 places that are legit bigger dollars, not coupon clipping. Number 1 is the IRS. If you're getting a refund from the IRS, it's because you need to change your exemptions and keep that money instead of giving the government an interest-free loan. You need to have tax strategy that puts more money in your pocket and less in the government's, legally and ethically, so you could build this, what I call a wealth capture account or a peace of mind fund, which is separated. Because here's the thing, if you don't separate your money, if all your money's in one account, that's like, once you put chocolate and milk and stir it, it's commingled. So if you commingle your funds, there's a thing called Parkinson's Law that says as you have an increase in income, your expenses will rise to meet or exceed that increase
so true.
within 3 to 6 months. They did a study in time, a study with money. So if you just separate it by paying yourself first off, you don't have to budget anymore if you pay yourself first. You just have to make sure you don't spend more than you make. Because budgeting, the problem with it is it's an excruciating process where you're always thinking about reduction.
Always.
And you don't shrink your way to wealth. So if you get in a reductionist mindset, it'll actually infiltrate your scarcity brain, and then it'll get you into that place of guilt, shame, and worry and all that kind of stuff, and it becomes damaging.
Which we all felt.
Right? So you pay yourself first. You save on tax. The second thing is you save on interest. There's 3 R's to save on interest. You could reallocate funds. If you have an interest rate where you're paying 6 and your money's earning 3, guess what? It's 100% return to pay that off. Because if I could buy this water for $1 and sell it for $2, that's 100% markup.
Yeah.
So if I'm only earning 3, but I'm paying 6, it's 100% savings on the interest rate if I pay that off. The second is you could restructure loans. There's people all the time that have cars that are paid off. They could refinance that car, pay off credit cards or student loans or things like that, and get a much better interest rate that actually helps their credit score as well. Or they could restructure a line of credit with their home and pay this off and make it tax deductible versus not tax deductible. And all of a sudden, they're paying less interest for the same loans that they have. That gives them, and there's even like strategies of which loans to pay, how to pay them. And the third thing is renegotiate. If you have a good credit score, then you can get a better interest rate on any credit card that you have by simply calling the company and saying, I'm thinking about doing a balance transfer or canceling this account. They move you to the retention department and you negotiate a better interest rate. So those 3 R's, restructure, reallocate, renegotiate, is more money in your pocket on interest. The third one is investments. A lot of people have hidden fees that are inside their investments, and if they reduce those fees, like here's the deal, 100 grand over 30 years at 10% grows to 1.74 million. At 9.2% grows to 1.4 million. 340 grand difference for less than 1%. So if we pay attention to that and remove unnecessary fees, you have a lot more money. And then the fourth I is insurance, which is duplicate coverages, improper structure. People just don't know how to design that, and they can end up paying less for the non-catastrophic things and only insure catastrophic things, and now they have more money. Those things are like 10% of your income that you can now save without destroying your lifestyle. You build up 6 months of savings, set aside, it's a peace of mind fund, because you know if you have a health challenge, a cash flow crunch, something you have to pay attention to with your kids or family, you've got money to have staying power. That's 6 months. When these financial people say 3 to 6 months, which is it, 3 or 6? Because if you're doing that one's a half marathon, the other's a marathon, you end in completely different places. And so they say 3 because low standards again, because they make you think, oh, well, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you'll never get there. So let's just say 3 months. I'm going, well, let's find the money, plug the leaks, and then you get there. And now when you have that 6 months, now you can start thinking about invest in your skills. Skill sets, it begins with you got to make more money.
Yeah.
How do you make more money? Exponential skill sets like financial intelligence, communication, speaking, marketing, sales, all of those factors, and then keep more of what you make as you move forward, and then grow your money later. People are chasing risk, not knowing where they're investing, lose money, lose confidence, and it becomes problematic. And then finally, you always grow yourself. That's just the focus. You're always saying, how do I improve my mental health? How do I improve my relationships? How do I design a life I don't want to retire from? How do I find ways that I can be engaged in my work and take some trips along the way and not just wait for 30 years? So that was a very long answer, I know.
No, I mean, we're both like, no, this is great. Because I'm sitting here thinking like, this is a scary topic, and this is a topic that guys sometimes will zone out to. Because
that's why I did comedy on it.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I wanted to reference your special on Amazon Prime, The American Ream, and it's based around this.
Yep.
And you do the whole money rap right in the beginning, which is really entertaining. And
white people rapping
and very
is
impressive,
entertaining
though.
Either because it's good or bad.
Well, no, it's insanely impressive. Obviously, just the memorization skills. But the thing is like this is extremely stressful. And then if you don't understand the mechanics behind it, it's even more stressful. And like you were saying, the whole 3 to 6 month thing, like I'm right there in that, like utilizing that safety net and realizing like, man, it'd be great to have another 3 months in there, because we've just talked about this. Like you hit a certain point in your career and your finances, like you said, it matches, you have everything together, and then your expenses just match your income. And it's like you blow through that a hell of a lot faster than you think that you do.
Yep.
And so this is all really interesting. And I like the route that this is going, because it opens your eyes to the fact that like, it might be scary, and it might be frustrating, or it might be one of those situations. I guess my almost like challenge would be at the moment of like, if there was a piqued interest or something you feel like you didn't know, but you feel like you wanted to know more of it, like where dumbing it down, where would you say like the beginning stages would be to go for somebody? Like kind
of go off his question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
For instance, check to check. Struggling family, medical bills, car payment, and all this kind of stuff. You don't have a lot of excess to invest to create 6 months. What do you do?
That's why it's save tax, save interest, save on investment fees, and save on how you design your insurance. Yeah. So the best thing, like I'll just give the best shortcut I could think of. If people just DM me on Instagram, Garrett B. Gunderson, I'll just give them financial health assessments. I'll just give them to them for free. They just go through, they go yes, no, or uncertain on all these areas, and they know exactly what's working and what's not working without having to look at all their finances. They could just, most of the people are going to mark uncertain and be like, oh, and realize like, I don't even know what's going on here. Mm-hmm. And part of it's because we buy based upon necessity, not based upon strategy. So it's like, okay, I bought a car, I need to get car insurance. Well, is that the right car insurance? Do you have the right deductibles? Do you have the right limits of liability? Do you have a multi-policy discount? Like there's just money to be found there. Like I had this woman, Glenda, out of Texas, where she was like car insurance and homeowners insurance with different companies. Oh. And I was like, well, let's make them the same company. You'll get a multi-policy discount. And then we use something called an excess liability or umbrella policy to get her $1 million of coverage. And then what we did is we raised her deductibles from $250 to $1,000 on both the car and the home with the multi-policy discount, using the umbrella to do the heavy lifting for the liability. $703 saved per year. Wow. Right? So that's $700 found with better coverage. What did she risk? She risked $750 a year. So if she makes less than one claim a year, she's ahead. And by the way, if you make more than one claim on your car insurance, you know what they do to you? They raise your rates. So you only want to insure catastrophic things and handle the small things on your own. That's what the 6 month accounts for. Even if it's not earning high interest rates, it's allowing you to get better structures with other pieces of your finances.
Yeah. And this is the reason like we're going this route, and I kind of like we're talking about this, is because this ties back into the question that you asked in the beginning of like, this will screw with your mental health so much if you let it get away from you.
And I've gone through it, man.
I wrote sleep. It's everything.
I wrote Killing Sacred Cows, which I talk about all these things. And from the time I wrote the book until the time it came out, I went from an $8 million net worth to zero because I was over leveraged in real estate. And the funny thing is, most of the mistakes I made, I'd wrote about that people should not make, but I guess I had to go through it myself to have the compassion for everybody else.
Yeah, the shoemaker's kid never has shoes.
And so I was like, oh, that's super painful. We'll remember this forever. And now I've become more, valuable to the people that I serve, but it was really painful. So like I've been through those situations. I'm a coal miner's son. It's not like I inherited money. Mm-hmm. Like, I started out with humble beginnings, an amazing family that loved me, but it wasn't like they were handing me money or anything like that. So I think that anyone can do it. It's just that we have to get past the limited beliefs and mindsets that people have given us to hold us into that kind of structure of thinking time for money, waiting till one day, someday, and it limits our ability.
Yeah, because if you really so I've worked for the Air Force, and there's been civilians who will retire and then literally a year later they're gone. And it's just like, oh man, you've lived your whole life saving for that pension and for that retirement, and you're not going to be able to enjoy it. And it kills me because I don't want to be that way. Yeah. I want to be able to enjoy my kids now, not my kids' kids. You know what I mean? And so this really hits home, and you're very educated. I appreciate you being here. It's been nice.
And I appreciate you throwing that out there too. Of like, we're gonna link your Instagram.
Yeah, we better say like if they go to Garrett B. Gunderson and DM me. dad bods and beards. If they put dad bods and beards, not beers.
That's later. That's later.
Yeah, see, there you go. Dad bods
and crows.
From beers. Dad bods from beers. So you put that in there, and we'll give you the financial assessment. But then we'll know what they're talking about. And we'll just hook them up.
Yeah, cool. No, we'll throw that in the link page. If you guys heard that, go to follow the link. We'll put all your Instagram page and the books on there and stuff. I will probably be in your DMs then. Actually, I might just text you.
That just sounded very sexual, really. You know,
hey,
what I'm
you know what?
Like,
and it is. It gets awkward.
It does get awkward at times. But no, and so
a lot of these people that are wanting you to.
It's
the feet pics, the OnlyFans.
They're like how lucky.
I mean, maybe that could be part of the financial assessment. You can be like, hey, dude, maybe lean into that. We can boost the nest. We can boost the nest egg.
$5 a picture.
Yeah. No, I don't know. We talked about this actually before you got here. You don't want to see my feet. They've spent years inside boots. But no, it's.
I can pick things up with my toes.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a.
Well, I'll do you one better.
That's a good thing.
This is like a weird turn, but I've said this a few times. I've got a couple of toes on my feet they're webbed up to the knuckle. Oh. I don't swim any better.
You should be able to swim better.
No, my
pinky toenails just grow straight up. Oh. They just go straight up.
We should do this at the end of every episode, like odd random facts about like personal facts that you only share with your doctor. But no, Garrett, this has been...
I have
an extra nipple right here. It doesn't protrude, so it doesn't but yeah.
Weird fact, though, this is true. I just found out I have scoliosis, and I have an extra vertebrae in my back.
An extra vertebrae?
Uh-huh. Like there's an extra...
To hold that head.
Yes.
That's why you're built like a gorilla?
No, I just what the crap? Because I have a very long torso.
We got webs, extra vertebrae.
There's a couple of mutants up in here. Yeah. But no, so guys...
He has tiny hands, I have big hands.
Well, I have pretty average hands.
You have girly,
Yeah, no, okay. Well, compared to you guys, I'm over here 5'10". But no, this has been awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'm so glad that this worked out. I mean, we were going to be up at your mountain home, and we got some pretty gnarly snow going up that way. So this worked out good.
Worked out good.
But so follow the link page, you guys. Check out Garrett's books. Check out his comedy special on Amazon. And then go to Instagram, shoot him a DM, and make sure you're referencing Dad Bods and Beards and
or beers, either way.
Yeah, Dad Bods and Beards or killing sacred crows.
You absolutely hate me.
What are you gonna do?
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So there's some business owners, lots of business owners that listen to this. I'm a business owner. We're business owners.
So much tax strategy for business owners, by the way.
Yeah, but I wanted to talk about the 20%. Do we pay ourselves the 20%? To us before we do anything else? Because I haven't paid myself in 5 years.
So you're talking about your W-2 versus distributions?
Just distribution.
Yeah, here's the thing. Businesses are like black holes. If you don't create some gravitational force against it by paying yourself, it'll always have an insatiable appetite and find ways to spend that money.
You got to figure crap out.
So you've got to learn to pay yourself and get really resourceful. I had this woman just got a divorce and she's starting a business. And I was like, look, I need you to pay yourself and I need you to save at least 10%. I want to get you up to 15% of your income. She's like, how am I going to do it? And a year later, she was doing all of it because she just made the commitment. And when you make the commitment, then things happen. There's not a lot of magical things in finance, but one of the magical things is if you pay yourself first, you find ways to make the rest of it work.
Okay.
I think that's the perfect way to answer. I mean,
it is, and I knew that was the answer.
Because if you don't do it, we could see a big bump next year, and you'll be like, wait, but I'm going to reinvest that, and then a big bump happens. Businesses have insatiable appetites. Just remember that.
Oh, dude, it's so true.
I mean, you can apply that to so many things, and I love
that.
Dude,
that was a great answer. You just
staring down the barrel of.
I love this. This hasn't changed anyone else.
And if you look at the physical transformation you're going through, it's like the same thing will happen financially when you commit to it. You're doing things differently, and it's lost 60 pounds because of it. You're insane, and now you're going to run a half marathon and all this kind of stuff. But it's like you committed to it. Most people don't know the difference between interest and commitment. Imagine call your wife right now and say, hey, I just want to let you know I'm 80% committed to this relationship. Yeah.
Well, it's been nice knowing you, Tyson.
You're either 100% or zero.
Yeah.
And so if you pay yourself, you're 100% committed. If you don't pay yourself, you're interested in paying yourself, but it's always going to be a kick down the road.
So you just do it.
Bombs.
Start small and grow. And then it's a percentage. When you grow, that percentage is always automatically coming.
I love that. I mean,
no, dude, that's legit.
Normally we like to end the episode sometimes with challenges, especially with guests, and I think that satiated that. Right
cool.
There. Like that was perfect. I mean, just
This was free advice for me.
I was gonna say this was great advice. I'm gonna save this one. But no, Garrett, thank you so much for being
thanks
here.
for having
I feel
me,
like we're gonna need to have you back on because, I mean, just the financial side
I
of.
didn't know you were so smart. I knew you were smart, but I didn't know
the
you
looks.
were so smart.
You know, it's I don't look smart, but I am smart. It's
No, you look. Like, I don't know. It's just I thought you were just a comedian. No,
I don't. You know, Rogan's a comedian, but look at that dude. He's like the most powerful voice in the world. So it's not bad.
That was the backhanded compliment. But
And then I tried to compare myself to the most influential person in the world. No.
and you are. No, to me, you are.
So,
And
Well-
also, I think I have boob sweat.
okay. Well, on that note, thanks so much for listening, guys, and we will catch you next week.